Hello, how are you doing? Here's a question. How do you lead a church in a season like this? How do we do this thing? This is a question, I guess, that is on the mind and the heart of every church leader at this time. How do you lead church in a time like this? My thoughts today are really trying to hit a number of people. I'm talking to up-and-coming leaders in my own church. But then I'm also talking to anyone else who is in leadership who happens to be listening to this. Those of you who aspire to leadership, there is never a better time to learn than in a season like this. And we really all are learning here. And that's the thing about this season. There are no experts in this season. You can't turn to the book. Nobody's written the book yet that talks about COVID-19 and how you're going to lead when the world is in crisis and a third of the world is in lockdown. Nobody's ever written a book about that. Nobody's ever probably even anticipated that. This is uncharted territory for all of us. There are no experts here. We are dealing with unprecedented circumstances. And so therefore, we are all learning. And I think that's the thing about leadership. The theory of leadership is so easy. It's so easy to know how to be a leader. You know, when you're sailing through calm waters, it's very easy to have all the theory sorted out about how you're going to lead when there's a storm. But I guess it's only when you hit the storm that real leadership needs to rise. And here we are in a storm, and right now, real leadership needs to rise in all of our churches. In my own church, we need leadership like never before. So church can't physically gather. We're doing the online thing. A lot of us are getting used to that. It's a new thing for many churches. Here at the Junction Church, we've been doing online for a while now, so we have a little bit of experience, but still it's uncharted territory for us, and we're learning lots. But the church can't physically gather, but leaders must keep leading. So even though you can't physically have people from your community gather on a Sunday and then you have the opportunity to talk to them physically, we still have to lead. And we can obviously do that online through being open and honest and having conversations online. But then there needs to be even more to it than that. And I want to offer a few thoughts that I've just been thinking recently. This is not in any way an expert talking here. How can anybody be an expert when we're all in uncharted territory? But I think that there are three things that I have observed in this season and that I'm certainly seeking to learn myself. And I think that these are kind of important in terms of leading church in a season like this. And here are three things that I think really matter. I think that I'm onto something with all three. They're practical, they're honest, they're real. Hopefully it's going to help you. Certainly in our own church, we talk much about culture, the importance of culture, and I would really love us to really take some of this stuff on board as well. Those of you who aspire to leadership, massively important. Here's the first of three things that I think we can learn in a season like this. Your tone needs earthiness and empathy. That's the first thing. I keep saying it over and over and over and over again that sometimes faith is triumphalistic, and it is totally appropriate for faith to be triumphalistic, believing for God to do amazing things and so on. And we all believe that. We all want that. But when you're in a season like this, we have to have a faith that is pitched right. It's not a compromised faith, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a faith that is an earthy faith, that is a gritty faith, that understands that people are going through it at the moment, that understands that there are people out there who've lost jobs. And they're dealing with the raw emotion of that. And then, of course, there are other people who are in self-isolation, and they're dealing with the emotion of that. Some of our folks have already lost loved ones to this virus. And so there's grief going on in our churches as well. So it would be quite wrong to have a tone of faith that is triumphalistic when what we need is earthiness and grittiness. I made a little video before, some of you may have seen it, about being a bridge chord leader in a season like this. In other words, you've got to get to the minor key. So you've got to get to where people are at, and then you've got to find the bridge cord that can lift people to a place of faith. That's not an easy thing, but that's certainly, I think, what faith needs in this moment in time. Jesus demonstrated this kind of leadership. 2 examples. Matthew 8, he touched a leper. You're not meant to touch a leper, but he touched the leper. He touched the untouchable, which represents the idea of compassion, empathy, entering into a man's world. This leper, who was an outcast of society, for all we know, he was a highly intelligent man, maybe previously a successful man, but then he got leprosy. And of course, in those days, if you got leprosy, you were then put into a leper colony, and you were an outcast of society because of the contagiousness of the disease. But Jesus touched the leper. I think that's leadership. I think that's the kind of leadership. That's the kind of faith. So Jesus brought him to a place of healing. But before the leper was healed, Jesus touched him. He empathized. Then there was the bridge cord, and he lifted the man to a place of faith and a place of trust. On another occasion, John chapter 11, the famous story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. But there's a little verse there that we often skip past because of our enthusiasm to get to the part where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. But John 11 tells us that Jesus wept, and that is such a statement of leadership. It wasn't a show. The idea of wept there was not loud crying. It was a quiet, dignified entering into grief. And again, that was leadership on Jesus' part. In front of all his enemies, in front of his detractors, in front of those who were his critics, in front of his disciples, in front of the family, Jesus wept. And that for me is earthy leadership. That's the kind of leadership that we need to be thinking about in a time like this. There are people in our churches who are going through it, who are grieving, and we need to learn how to weep with them and then lift them to a place of faith before the resurrection takes place, and we're believing for new life to happen. But we need to make sure that there's a grit and an earthiness to what we're doing. And I think that that's massively important in this season. As the season continues, very, very important. So the faith tone needs earthiness and needs empathy, and I think that really matters in this season. Here's the second thing that I've observed, which is that your vibe needs positivity. Now I'm shifting the gear a little bit, and this is, I think, what I've picked up, certainly in myself, and I think that leaders need to really model this very well. Vibe is the atmosphere that you carry. Again, that atmosphere comes across not just when you're in the room, but that atmosphere comes across when you're on the screen. That atmosphere comes across when you're writing your status on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And that vibe of a leader needs some positivity. I'm telling you, people are watching you as a leader. And those of you who aspire to leadership, this is where leadership starts. It's not by being on the platform. It's by how you're doing this thing called life, how you're dealing with this crisis that we're going through. And somebody says, well, we're under great pressure at the moment, so I'm irritated. And that is true. We're all under great pressure. But the thing about pressure is that it doesn't conceal what is in the heart. Pressure reveals what is really going on in our hearts. And that's a very scary thought in a lot of ways, because all that stuff that's going on there, that is being shown for what it is if we're not dealing with it. And so this season of pressure is unbelievably important for us to carry a vibe that is positive. When you're writing a status, if you're a leader, you can't afford to be writing negative statuses in a season like this. You just can't afford to do that, because that vibe will really be picked up by people who follow you in that church. You can't afford to be writing ranting, raving complaints. You can't do that. Your leadership needs positivity to it in a season like this. And the challenge is, of course, that people will eventually follow that. So if a leader is ranting and raving and complaining, well, then we shouldn't be surprised if that's the vibe that carries through amongst the people that we lead. People are following your lead, even from a distance. And that's why in a season like this, we need leadership that is positive. I would encourage all of us to make sure we're not making conclusions in the moment. I think this is a great danger, concluding what God's saying in the moment. Listen, we haven't even started this yet, so just journey through the season, have some faith, trust God, make sure it's earthy faith, of course, and gritty faith. Trust God, lead with wisdom, lead with calmness. None of us are that good that we know exactly what God is saying in this moment. We need a little bit of humility in our hearts to just serve our people and serve them really well and carry a vibe that's just positive and fresh, that gives people the reason to have hope. And leaders need profound security. Don't, again, in a season like this, the danger with online church, and every leader knows what I'm talking about, what I'm just about to say. You do your online church thing, and then you go and you have a little look at what other churches are doing. Some of them encourage you because they're worse than what you did. And then some of them really annoy you because they're really, really good. But as a leader, you cannot afford in this season to have bitter vibes. You can't afford to have vibes of negativity and criticism and making little jibes at other churches whose online church was better than what you did. This is just not helpful to any of us. And one of the things that I have made a point of doing, I made sure that I did it yesterday, was that when I saw an online church, I tried to make a point of encouraging them. I wrote on their status, "Well done, guys. Keep going for it. Keep going for it." Even the ones that were not quite so good, but I would write on the status, "Keep going for it, guys. Come on." And the ones that were really good, I would celebrate them, because some of the productions of online church are absolutely amazing, and I celebrate the creativity. Why would I not? Why would leaders not? And I've made a personal decision. I am not going to live in the land of gossip and of criticizing and of saying stuff that just has no virtue in it about another church or another leader. I'm just not living like that. I'm not going to waste my life living like that. And the thing is, when you do live like that, it undermines respect for you personally as well, and people ultimately follow that lead. So again, if you want people to really engage with your social media, then you've got to be the biggest encourager out there. If you want people to be on your online church, bigging it up and saying great things, you've got to be the living embodiment of what that means for others as well. So, because the danger otherwise is we're just barking out orders as leaders. And truth is that the leadership that's required in a season like this is practical, real leadership that models the way, doesn't just shout out instructions. We need to serve our people like never before. And your vibe needs positivity. We need to dig deep as leaders. Very, very important. Here's the third thing that I think that I've observed in this season, which is this, and it kind of follows on, and I won't spend long on the point, but your encouragement needs intentionality. Your encouragement towards others needs total intentionality. Encouragement is verbal and not silent. So that means that, whilst we must pray, and of course we must pray, we must be in the place of prayer, praying constantly. But then in a season like this, we need to make sure that we're letting people know we're praying for them. The sense of this season needs that. People need to know you're not on your own. I am praying for you. I made a point again just yesterday. I do it every Sunday. I just text at least 10, 15, sometimes 20 leaders. I'm praying for you. And I do it even before I send the text. Lord, I pray for this guy, that you'll bless their church and bless what they're doing. And I pray. I give it a good prayer. And then I let them know I'm praying for them. Because I think that's the kind of courage that's the kind of encouragement that is needed in a season like this. We need to encourage others. And that encouragement is verbal, not silent. It's active and not passive. And great encouragement doesn't just happen to say something really nice, but it is absolutely intentional, engaging, on the phone to people in our churches, sending loads of texts. If you're a pastor at home and you're saying, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck at home. Listen, you should be on your phone from morning to evening. You should be on your phone morning to evening. You should be texting people in your church. You should be sending out messages. You should be, producing some online stuff so that the people in your church can hear what you have to say in this season. Silence in a season like this is not an option. This is a season where leaders need to speak up and rise up. And that tone needs to be right, and we need to speak with encouragement, We need to speak with encouragement and prayerfulness about the leaders of our nation. One of the things that has saddened my heart has been some of the criticisms of national leadership in terms of government. And I just feel, no, that is, maybe there's a place for that at a different time. But at this time of crisis, we need to be speaking highly of those who lead us. We need to be really supporting them and encouraging them. And as leaders, you and I need to be leading the charge on that. If we're not doing it, then why should we expect the people in our churches to be doing that as well? Leadership is verbal, it's active, it's enthusiastic, and not apathetic. And again, that's the danger as the weeks of this lockdown go on, and it does looking like it's going to be a significant amount of time. So you've got to resolve now, if this is going to be a significant length of time, then I'm not going to wait until month 3 before I start putting some of this stuff into practice. I'm going to get on with it now. And I'm going to be a great encourager. I'm going to set the tone in my church. Yes, my people physically can't see me, but they can see me online. They can see my conduct. They can see my statuses. They can see how I'm interacting. And I want to make sure that what they're seeing is worth seeing. I want it to be positive and encouraging and fresh, something that's really going to help other people as well. These are just 3 things that I've been thinking about that I think that leaders need to be aware of and that we need to really work on as well. Your tone, it needs earthiness. It needs empathy. And then your vibe, it needs total positivity in a season like this, real, genuine positivity. And then your encouragement needs intentionality. This is the kind of leadership that I think we need in a season like this. I totally get it. Uncharted territory. We're all in this together. Nobody has cracked this thing yet. How could anybody have possibly cracked this yet? So we're learning. I know I am. And in the midst of all the frustrations, I'm trying to make sure that I deal with my own heart and loads of stuff. And I pray that it's exactly the same for you. Anyway, I hope this has been of some kind of help to you today. We just want you to know we love you. We're praying for you, genuinely praying for you. I'm speaking to everybody, whether you're a pastor. Just want you to know my proverbial hat is off to you. Keep going for it. Those of you who are on the leadership forum in our own church, and there's 50, 60 of you doing that across our campuses, just want you guys to know, keep going for it. This is a season for you not to lean out. This is a season to lean in and to really model leadership. Now is your chance to do something about this and to model leadership in a season like this. Love you guys loads, praying much for you, and God bless you.